running, and have you not found out yet that she's not slowing down for you? I wish and it makes you think, is this the one, or do I look for another? Sometimes you go to a doctor and the doctor talk to you crazy, and you say, well, I ain't got to put up with this here, But then you go to another doctor and he's crazy out. He come in and say, let me check your blood pressure. And he started wrapping something around your leg, and he's supposed to be checking your blood pressure. Well, blood pressure goes on the arm, and he got the thing down at your leg. He said, how's your arm doing? And he's touching your leg. You may not want to go to that doctor. And as it seems funny, can I tell you, and I know how it is, that's the kind of stuff that traps us down. That's the kind of things that cause us emotions and makes us stressed out and makes us think about things that we don't need to keep thinking about so long. Can I tell you something? You know what to do. You're just afraid of the consequences of doing it. You ain't got to talk to 20 more people. You know how you ought to resolve it. You already know. You're running and chasing, and that thing ain't slowing down. You already know you got to turn the lights off to make that thing seem like it's the right thing when you know it ain't. And let's don't even talk about how much you've drank, how much you smoked, and how much you've tooted, but just because you're trying to make it out there. And I just say, sometimes it's cheaper you really got to think about these things. And I say, well, I love Mount Gilead. Sometimes Mount Gilead seems crazy to me, and I said, well, I'm sure sometimes I seem crazy to Mount Gilead, and I go in love, out of love, and sometimes I'm up and down with Mount Gilead, and Mount Gilead sometimes in love, out of love with me. But for 133 years, God has kept us together. Well, I wish I had a witness in here. And what I like about Mount Gilead is not how Mount Gilead looks and who's here. What I like about Mount Gilead is Mount Gilead still knows the commander. You don't mind going through some headaches, and you don't mind turning off the lights, and you don't mind if you know that you got the right one, baby. Oh, come on, help me in here. You don't mind running. You don't mind. Shucks, I'll run all over the place. Where you going, girl? Come on here. I don't mind running. Come. Wait a minute. Come here. Come here. Woo-wee. You don't mind doing that. When my mentor said, ain't nothing wrong with being henpecked if you're pecked by the right hand. I wish I had. And I tell you something, I'm wearing the shirt, but I'm wearing it in my heart and in my mind. I love the Mount Gilead people. Pastor loves every Mount Gilead person up in here today. I love you. Listen, I love you. And I love you so much, Mount Gilead, I will love the hell out of you. And that's how you've got to love me. Because there's something wrong with all of us. Oh, I wish I had. Everybody in here got some scars. Everybody in here got some closet stuff. Everybody in here got out of bed that looks a certain kind of way. But at the end of the day, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. Sometimes you just got to love the one you're with. Oh, I wish I had some help in here. Sometimes I wonder though, is this the one? Or do I look for another? John the Baptist wondered, is this the head of the church? Do I need to be looking for another, because I'm locked up? And this Jesus is still out there teaching and preaching, but I'm locked up and they about to kill me, and I need to know, have I done what I've done in vain? Am I in jail for no reason at all? I mean, I don't mind getting locked up if I'm out marching and teaching and preaching for the right cause, because to lock me up, Martin Luther King, to lock me up, Jesse Jackson, to lock me up for doing the right thing, I don't mind doing that. But if you're locking me up and I've done this stuff for nothing, I'm just trying to find out whether or not, is this the one, or do I look for another? I don't mind being stressed if this is the one. I don't mind being depressed if this is the one. I don't mind going through the ups and downs if this is the one. I don't mind chasing if this is the one. I don't mind turning off the lights and turning them on if this is the one. But I need to know, is this the one? Or do I look for another? Well, let's dance in the text. In verse number 1, now it came to pass when Jesus finished commanding his 12 disciples that he departed from there to teach and to preach in their cities. Notice what happens. He commands them. In other words, for you to know if this is the one or to look for another, you've got to check the commandment. There's some truth that's involved in everything that you and I do in life. Truth involved in working, truth involved in the wheels, truth involved in the work you do, truth involved in the ways you take, truth involved. And so you've got a commandment here in verse number 11, but the commandment is just not static sitting there. The commandment is given through communication of a commander. Say communication of a commander. All right, and so John bears this out. Matthew does. He bears this out in verse number 2. But before we get there, notice that in verse 1, it came to pass when Jesus finished commanding. There's the commanding. He's not asking. He's not hoping for somebody to hear him. He is commanding. He is declaring, you had better hear me. Do you hear me now? And sometimes when you are knocked down and knocked out, it's Jesus there saying to you, do you hear me now? You say, well, I don't know that he would do that. Yes, he did it to Saul on the road to Damascus. He knocked him down. And then when Saul got knocked down and almost knocked out, he got back up blind, and when he got back up blind, he starts seeing things better, but he's blind. He starts seeing things not with his physical eye, but he began to see things with a spiritual eye called faith. And he began to speak out of faith toward favor, saying, what do you want me to do for you, Lord? What have I done? And sometimes, beloved, don't think that everything that's happening to you is bad. God is working it for your good. He's got to knock you down in order to lift you up. He's got to blind your physical eyes to make you see in the darkness. And so it is. He finished commandments. Notice who he's talking to. He's talking to 12 disciples. And then the Bible says that he departed from there After he had commanded them, he departed from there. Look what else he's getting ready to do. He had made some commandments. He was already making commandments, communicating them. Now he's departing from there to teach and to preach in the cities. The right church doesn't stay just in a building. I wish I could get a little, but that's all right. I brought me some with me anyway. Amen. I'll use one on you in here in a minute. The right church does not stay just in these walls. It's not merely about the members of Mount Gilead that we're concerned about, that we're communicating about, that the commandment is about. It's about the sheep who are not of this fold, who are in the cities. How can we sit down in air condition on this Sunday knowing that somebody's child is going up and down Lafayette Street, going up and down 12th Avenue South, going up and down 10th South on drugs? We gotta get out of the comfort zone, move out into the cities, teaching and preaching. Is this the church? Or should I look for another? We fight over mundane things in church houses. What color's the carpet? What kind of car is the pastor driving? And I've always wondered about that, because members can drive what they want to. Everybody's happy. Well, that ain't in there, is it? Let me get back in there. Teach and to preach in the cities. Now notice in verse 2, and when John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he heard it well. In prison, he's bound. That is the best time to hear from Jesus. And the way the Lord works is not the way we work. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. The way the Lord works, he works when we get bound up. And sometimes we need a good binding in order to get a better loosing. Reason why some of us can't get loose and praise him in the service is because we have not been bound right. But I tell you something, mess around and get in trouble. Mess around and go through some trials. Mess around and not have enough money to pay your bills. Mess around and have your friends lie on you. It'll bind you up. But when you get bound up, that's the best time for the Lord to loose you. And he does it in the cities. Well, in verse number 3, we already have seen in verse number 1 the commander making a commandment, because we don't know if he's the one or whether or not we should look for another unless we get a commandment. You can have a commandment from Moses, but he's not the right one, baby. You can have a commandment from John, but he's not the right one. You can have a commander from Joshua, James. You can have one from Joseph, but John here is looking for one from the commander-in-chief. Can I get some help in here? And when I think about, yes, Barack Obama, when I think about the very fact that he's the first African-American president in the history of this United States, sometimes he's lonely all by himself. Sometimes he's sitting in a room and nobody looks like him. Nobody comes from where he came from. And sometimes he's saying things that they don't seem to quite understand. But sometimes when your facial expressions cannot speak for you, can I tell you what? Your office will speak for you. If somebody is messing with you, if the enemy is on your trail, if you can just hold out, if you can just hold on, deliverance will come, because no weapon formed against you shall prosper. It just won't work.
Is there anybody here what I'm saying? If you could just hold on, if you could just hold on. Look at your neighbor and say, hold on. Look at somebody else and say, hold out. Because God will make a way out of all shucks, out of no way. Have you ever tried God just like that? Won't God make a way when you think he's giving up on you, when you think he's not listening to you, when you think he's gone to sleep on you, when you think God is slumbering, when you think you prayed and cried and prayed and cried and prayed and cried and prayed and cried, drunk and drank and smoked and tooted and walked and ran, God is still there. Does anybody know that? He's standing by. Ain't he standing by? He may not show up when you ask for him, but he's standing by. He may not show up when you run for him, but he's standing by. He will show up. And when God shows up, he shows out. I got to hurry along here. All right. How many minutes am I doing, preacher? Have I gone past 30? All right. Trying to do it in 30 today. How am I doing? How am I doing? All right. I might have to ask for a voucher. I might have to. Y'all get with me. Help me here. Because I'm still in round 1 right now. I got to hurry along. I'm trying to get back in the ring in round 2. In verse 2, I'm not going to preach all 11. I'm going to just preach all 11. And when John had heard in prison about the works of Jesus, watch this, he sent 2 of his disciples. Why 2? Because 2 means a witness. If you ever want to bear out the truth, you need at least 2 or 3 to do it. Accusations are not to be brought against an elder except by 2 or 3 witnesses. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Well, Jesus was sitting down in Matthew 15 telling them, said, listen, where 2 or 3 are agreeing, there am I in the midst. Can I help somebody? This ain't all about you, baby. The world ain't yours. You can say it all you want to. You can think it all you want to, but you need somebody else. I need you and you need me. We are part of God's body. Come on, help me in here. He sent out, he sent out two of his disciples. Notice he didn't send out 2 heathens. And the problem in the church sometimes is we're sending out heathens. They don't know Jesus. They don't know God. And they sure ain't moving by the Holy Spirit. But we sending them out. And what you know what they're doing? They tearing up everything they run into. They can't get to the parking lot before they tearing up something. But if you know Jesus, if you know the man from Galilee, he sends you out. In verse 3, and said to him, are you the coming one? Or do we look for another? I like this. John is a little bit disturbed. He's locked up, but he's still talking right. He's bound, but he still knows it ain't but one. Deacon Johnson's got some good theology. He said it back in Deacon's devotion. Deacon Johnson, we were talking about the goodness of God. And Deacon Johnson said, well, he's number 1. And Deacon Johnson and the rest of the deacons, we got to thinking about that. Well, he is, isn't he? Because there is no number 2. Y'all ain't listening to me. It's the only time one doesn't get followed by another one. It's the only time one doesn't get added to by a 0. Y'all ain't listening. He's the only one. John says, is he the one? Well, at least he's talking right. He says he's the one. Or do we look for another? Well, John, how you gonna look for him and you're locked up? Well,
You got a nerve to say, do we look for another? You locked up, you can't see nobody. You in jail. Well, that's the goodness and the favor of God. Because when you have been changed by God, you no longer look with your physical eyes. The one you're looking for, you don't see him with your physical eyes. That's why David Koresh didn't work. That's why Jim Jones didn't work. That's why the rest of them won't work. But I tell you something, there's about that J-E-S-U-S. Jesus will work every time. I've not seen him personally, but I've met him personally. I've not seen him with my physical eyes, but I've seen him through faith. Sometimes I've called on him. I've needed to meet with him. And sometimes folk will see me sitting outside, see me sitting at a red light, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, thank you, Jesus. God, you'll have mercy on me. He's not sitting in the car, but he's there. He's not talking back to me physically, but he's there. Well, let me hurry, because y'all got to go eat, I know. But let me hurry. In verse number 4, Jesus answered and said to them, go. Notice what's happening. I need you to take some action. I don't want you just to stay where I am, because I know you know I'm the head, but the body is scattered abroad, and that's the way it gets with us sometimes. Our body gets scattered abroad. Sometimes your head hurts so bad it gets scattered abroad. Sometimes your feelings are hurt so bad it just scatters you. But can I tell you something? As long as Jesus is your head, it does not really matter how far you go out, because even when the pastor can't reach you, even when he's trying to lay out the shepherd rod, can I tell you something? The good shepherd always can come and get a hook on you. Anybody getting that point right there? You can't go so far out in the wilderness that God can't come and get you. Is there anybody happy God came to get you? Are you happy God is with you right now? I know it doesn't seem like you can feel him. He's not a F-E-E-L-I-N-G all the time, but he's a F-I-L-L-I-N-G eternally. He's feeling me. Y'all ain't listening. Y'all trying to feel him, but he's feeling me. I'm so glad God is feeling me. I'm be finishing in just a minute. And in verse 5, the blind, slow me down, Lord. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. Hold it. The blind physically are getting sight physically, but that's not all Jesus was saying. You are blind in faith through my teaching and preaching, through my commandment. As the commander, I've communicated to you by way of a commandment, and it's a caring ministry. I care so much, and I've got so much compassion that I'm going to make your little faith see better to become big faith. He says in verse 5, and the lame walk. He says, I know you've been walking and chasing the wrong thing, but you know what? I'm going to make you so tired of chasing and running after the wrong thing until I'm going to make you walk for me. He says the lepers are clean. More people are scared of cancer than they are sin. And I would be scared about that thing that radiation can't treat. I would be more scared about that thing that chemotherapy can't cure.
We got some lepers in here. We've got some sinners in here. If you look on your pew, you ain't got to look around. Just look down at your own hand. It's a sinful hand. You ought to thank God that He hadn't cut off your hand. We're lepers, we're sinners. And you know what He does? He takes lepers and cleans them off. And then He takes deaf folk that can't hear His words, and He opens up their ears. Remember, there was a time you didn't hear Him as good as you do now, but you got tired of getting knocked down and knocked out, and you started listening a little bit better. He takes dead folks who are dead in trespasses and sins, and He raises us up. He takes the poor who are poor in spirits and don't have enough spirit to work from, enough spirit to make you move, He takes the poor. He says the poor have the gospel preached to them. How do you have the good news preached to you? It comes through truth and spirit. They that worship me, the Lord says, in spirit and in truth. Is there anybody listening to the truth? I know you're ready to go, but you might die when you leave here. You better hear the truth before you get out of here. Is there anybody listening to the truth? Verse 6 says, and blessed is he who is not offended because of me. In other words, don't be ashamed of the gospel. Don't be ashamed of the gospel. I'm trying to hurry along. Don't be ashamed of the gospel. If you know it's true, tell it. Don't just say it in here. Say it on your job. Say it on the bus. Say it when you go in a hospital. Say it when you're in a meeting. Say it when you're in the grocery store. Say it up and down the highways and the byways. Say it to your friends. Say it to your enemies. Tell them the truth. If you know the Lord has blessed your soul, then you ought to tell it. Are you listening to me? Yeah. Well, you can't agree with everything the world agrees with, because the world agrees with stuff that seems right, but the word agrees with stuff that is right. We don't walk by a word that seems right. We walk by, give me 5 minutes, I'm gone, a word that is right. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And in verse number 7, and they departed, and Jesus began to say to the multitude concerning John, what did you go out into the wilderness to see? And what I want to tell somebody is that it's not a bad thing to be in the wilderness, because that's how life is anyway. It's wild and dangerous. It's the wilderness. It's wild and crazy. It's the wilderness. There are people out in the world that will drive you crazy. You look over there in Britain, you look over in England, and you ask yourself the question, why did this man take a knife and a cleaver and a butcher and stab up a man and cut his arms off and